around with separate thoughts. I think ideas for the future, both optimistic and pessimistic. I think we kind of knew that it could go either way, and sometimes it'll go both ways. There were some trends, though. We found the areas we were really thinking were things like health, resources, transportation, food, the built environment, technology, business and branding, people, development, politics and finance, and education. So, and you can see that with the color distribution, our ideas were really all over, this area or these different topics.
So we can go through these. So we basically took kind of what we thought were themes over all of them, and redistributed that into what actually composes the story. So I don't know if you want to start. I'll give I think I messed up the order, but in general, the theme of our overall, what we kind of named our service, globalization and connectivity, driving localization. So the ability of sort of these bigger systems collapsing, in a positive way, not collapsing in a bad way, allow for a better sort of approach to things. So
yeah, I think we talked about technology really changing, transforming business so that it's not place-based. You've got 50 different people in one building working for 50 different companies. It does raise the issue of branding and culture, which is nice. But it really, what this means is you can kind of work from anywhere, and you don't necessarily even have to go into an office. And that removes a huge chunk of the transportation sort of driver, what we need to do to move around. So we kind of have this flexibility of business and kind of redefinition of business, and then reimagining infrastructure. So taking things like highways, we did the bridge because it's a lot easier to draw than a highway, but taking things like bridges and highways and making them transit corridors, agriculture corridors, renewable energy corridors, so rather than focusing on private transportation, it's a public amenity. So not just making the bridge better, not just improving it, but changing what it does. Then we worked on looking at how the built environment on more of a micro scale becomes smarter, more intelligent, more generative, that it's adaptable and flexible so that buildings can become other buildings. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so we have some data sort of popping out of the house. So like houses and everything we have will get much smarter and interact with you. So it's about your house talking to you, you talking back to your house, the clothing you're wearing, responding. So we have some, shirt, the Under Armour has these shirts that reads the sensor, it reads your heart rate, and then react to how much you need to walk that day. There's all these things already in motion. So 10 years from now, I feel like that's going to just extrapolate to unbelievable degrees. So how will you talk to your building, and then your building will talk back, and how can systems all communicate, and you're not even doing anything but being there?
That could be scary.
Yeah.
But also, like making things work for you. So, like rather than you working for your building or your shirt or your car, making those things. Does your building use energy or make energy? Do your clothes regulate your temperature so that the building doesn't have to? You're making things more functional. I think, and providing much more services. So that we moved away from that. We individualized services, and we made a lot of stuff. And now we really work for that stuff. It doesn't work for us efficiently.
So then it's really about, all right, if we're sort of products are less about what it is and it's more about service, how do our services then work better for us? So we were kind of using the example of car sharing and, sharing resources, sharing things, sharing the big stuff and the little stuff, and sharing it across more people. So it's more about being more productive and less about having things.
Well, actually, ultimately, all of these things are allowing us to actually become more regional and more like community focused, which also allows us to explore culture again and to look at things that are like more handmade and like talk about the things that actually people need.
Humanizing.
Yeah.
And then what that led down to is that there's this local understanding of what's happening on a very regional level in terms of either handcrafted items that you're able to get from local sources to food items that might be coming from much more regional areas as opposed to things being shipped in from far away. And how the buildings and facilities are reacting to what's happening locally as well. And we kind of drew this icon of a classical farm that may be located in an area with a southern overhang, because then that's relating to how the environment in that area affects that building, how that building needs to react to that. And then the silo is a mechanism or a metaphor and what about the local food sources that are coming in. And that these regional identities that we have or interactions that we have are actually virtually proximate to the world at large through, again, the communications and the connectivity that's happening at the very beginning of this cycle, so that we are still completely connected to everything on the outside world, but you may be able to relate to it only on a specifically regional or local level, be it in terms of how you work on your day-to-day interactions with business or how you just deal with your lives and each other.
And then we had our wild card was climate change, which may drive the relocation or movement of a lot of people. So some of these, we're reducing the need to move people for business purposes, for commuting and things like that, but there will be a need to relook at infrastructure and look at movement of people, potentially for that reason.
We were the heads down group. Introverts just like going in and like writing out our own things, and then they kind of came over and they poked us and they said, "Okay, look, you got to be heads up." So we did start talking about our ideas, and we came up with these kind of highlighted items. Initially, we had to think about 16 different items. We tried to distill that down a little bit into a couple main issues.
Can you go through them real quick for those of us?
Yeah, we had health, energy resources, kind of food, transportation, the built environment, technology, business, brand, people, development, education, and then politics and finance. And then we took that and distilled it down into about 8 issues that then became manifested with these icons that we have on the diagram here.
Nice job.
It was interesting as we did it, we sort of found, well, there's a macro and the micro, and they all related to each other. So rather than being 8 issues that sort of were independent, they all kind of needed each other to work together. So that's what, okay, we'll just get this story.
It's a system.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of in some ways when you get down to the people with the car sharing thing? It reminds me of, Sean, I said, "Oh, did you ride your bike today?" And he said, "No, I use bike share." So is that something that you guys discussed, was that why do we each have to own individual items, whatever they are, lawnmowers or cars or whatever, but more of this, why wouldn't it be more of a supply and demand? I only need to mow my grass once a week, so why wouldn't I just check out a lawnmower? And yet my neighbors could use it on the other days.
There was a very consistent, like a lot of our descriptions have the word flexible, adaptable, smart, connected. Like it's all about not doing things because that's the way we've always done it, but finding the adaptable way that makes the most sense and is efficient, and not just thinking about, all right, what's going to be best for GE's bottom line, doing what makes sense for everybody.
We really looked at moving towards service rather than consumption, and the less stuff you have to move around, then the less you need those highways and other infrastructure that was really dedicated to things that aren't working well for our environment. So it's definitely, I think, we're moving forward into a generation or multiple generations that just they don't necessarily want to have the burden of owning all this stuff. Like, I want things to work for me. I don't want to work with things. So.
And they're not defined.
I think that's what's happening now when people are moving back into the city, because they're like, they're leaving their McMansions out in the suburbs, and they go, why do I need all this space? Why do I need a formal grand entry staircase?
Right. And we, like, I even had one of my participants was like, people should be paid to walk instead of drive. We give tax credits to people who buy a more energy efficient car, which is really just a less bad car. Why not pay people, give them a tax rebate because they walk and they don't drive, or because they cycle and don't drive.
Well, that goes to wellness as well.
It goes to health and wellness. Yeah, and all these things are related. We had every post-it note, I think, could have fit in 2 or 3 different categories, and it was really hard to figure out where to put them. Because it is systemic, you can't, they're all related. So.
Very good. Any comments, questions?
I mean, a lot of parallels to what we talked about. I think ours is a little more esoteric, but a lot of it was a catch-all word, but I think
I hear a disclaimer coming on.
A lot of continuity between the ideas, and the idea of technology about sort of buildings knowing how you think. I don't know if anybody saw the article today about the woman with the prosthesis that was able to control it with her mind. I mean, if that's an application that's going to grow in the next 10 years, God only knows what buildings and cars and workplaces can do if you can just think about it and it occurs.
Cool.